This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Feast or Famine, bonus episode. When Q pulled up to the private airport in Fort Worth, Angela was confused. Q punched in a code at the gate, and when the gate opened, he drove through, drove around the back of the hangar, pulled into the garage, and put the car in park. Q hopped out of the truck, went around to the passenger side, and opened Angela's door, as he always does. And as he helped her out of the car, a man walked over to greet them. He said, "Nephew." Q looked up and said, "What up, Unc?" The two men slapped up and hugged, and then Q introduced Angela to his uncle. He said, "Angela, this is my uncle, Artemis St. James, but everybody calls him Art. Uncle Art, this is my lady, Angela, but everybody calls her Angie." Uncle Art looked Angela up and down and said, "I see you, nephew." Angela blushed and Q took her hand and he said, "You ready?" Angela said, "For what?" Q led Angela to the right side of a Cessna 420, helped her up into the seat, and handed her some air protection. Then he walked around the nose of the plane and jumped in the pilot's seat. He looked at her and said, "Buckle up." Angela was shocked. She looked at Q and said, "You know how to fly this thing?" Q said, "Of course I do. I own it." Q put on his hearing protection, flipped down the microphone, checked in with air traffic control, turned on the aircraft, checked all his modules and monitors, fastened his seatbelt, turned down the lights in the cockpit, backed the airplane out of the hangar, lined up on the runway, and took off. When the plane was flying at a cruising altitude, Angela said, "We are in an airplane. What kind of date is this?" Q said, "I told you, baby, the best date you'll ever go on in your life." She said, "What else don't I know about you?" Q said, "I'm sure there's a lot you don't know about me, and it's a lot I don't know about you, but we're going to enjoy every minute of getting to know each other." Angela said, "Well, where are we going?" Q said, "Don't worry. The Queen Mother and Miss Brenda know where we're going. So if for any reason there's an issue, they know where to look." Then Q told Angela all about his flight experience, about his uncle's flight business, his planes and private flight school, all of the amenities on the plane that they were flying on, and the various airplanes in the fleet owned by the family. They exchanged childhood stories about their travels with their families growing up. Most of Q's included flights on family owned planes, while Angela's included trips to family owned estates. About 4 hours later, when they landed in New York City, Angela knew she was in for the time of her life. Q smoothly landed the flight on the runway of the private airport, and there to meet them was his cousin AJ, Artemis Jr. Upon introductions, his cousin had the same reaction that his uncle did. "Damn, cuz, I see you." AJ gave the couple a ride to One Trade Center, where the couple experienced the New York City One World Observatory, 3 floors of the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. Angela got to see a 360-degree view of New York City, multiple art installations that covered New York City's history, and then the couple enjoyed dinner on the 101st floor at the One Diner while overlooking New York City. Angela had the time of her life. Angela and Q both shared a love for art, history, geography, and amazing architecture. So this was right up Angela's alley. After dinner, Q took Angela back to his old neighborhood in Brooklyn, where his family still owned a brownstone and his uncle Art and his family still resided. They walked around the neighborhood, and Q told her stories about the people, places, and things of his childhood. They even ran into some of his old friends and neighbors. They stopped at a local bodega and picked up some of Q's favorite snacks and even had ice cream. When they were done, they walked back to the brownstone, and AJ took them back to the airport. Angela was concerned about Q flying back 4 hours after such a long day, but she had no need to worry because AJ was flying them back on a different plane. Angela and Q sat in a 9-passenger cabin where they ate snacks, talked, watched a movie, laughed, and fell asleep, wrapped in one another's arms. When Angela woke up, it was 3 a.m., and they were landing in Dallas. Angela said, "Baby, this was the best date ever." Q said, "I'm so glad." Listen, if there's ever a situation where you and the family need to get out of town and you need to do it faster than you can drive in a car or sooner than you can arrange flight, commercially or private, come to the Clearport. Uncle Art or AJ will get you out of here. Angela said, "Why would I?" Q said, "Just remember, if you ever need to, this is what you do." Q drove Angela home, and then he told her, "Tomorrow, after church, be dressed like a delicate flower. I'll be here to get you at 5. Angela said, "Wait, I thought this was the date." Q said, "Nah, we got part 2 tomorrow." Later on that evening, Q pulled up in the back seat of a chauffeured town car. Just like before, he pressed the intercom to be let in, despite having the code, and rung the doorbell, despite having a key. When Angela opened the door, she was stunning. She had blown her naturally curly hair out straight, applied a light coating of makeup, and her body was lightly scented in Gucci Bloom perfume. Q wasn't dressed too shabby himself. He was back in his signature black on black Armani tailored suit, accented with a royal blue presidential and a platinum, diamond, and sapphire lapel pin and cufflink set. He had diamond studs in his ear and a blue, black, and silver tie around his neck. The cut of the suit accentuated his muscular toned frame, and his all black, red bottom loafers sealed the deal. He had a fresh Caesar, and his goatee and mustache were trimmed to perfection. When he looked at Angela, his jaw was slack, and he was speechless. All he could do was open the Tiffany box in his hand and point it at Angela. Inside was a Elsa Pereira sapphire and platinum earring, necklace, and bracelet set. Angela was shocked. He placed the bracelet on her wrist, the necklace on her neck, and waited for her to put the earrings in her ear. They were a stunning couple, perfectly matched. Hugh led Angela to the town car, and they headed out. When they pulled up outside of Alberno's, Angela knew she was in for another night of her life. Once inside, they were seated immediately for their reservation. Angela was so confused when the waiter never presented them with a menu. He just started bringing out plate after plate of testing portions of each dish. Angela looked at Q a little confused, and he was confused too, because he'd never been there either. Q said, "I think we're supposed to taste each thing and then tell them which one we want." When the waiter finally came back and was ready to take their orders, Q took the lead, and he was right. The couple both settled on filet mignon with lobster tails. Over dinner, they discussed everything under the sun. The children, their businesses, Stephanie's wedding plans, Q's PI firm, and the cases that he's currently working on, the classes he's been teaching at TCO. Throughout the night, they laughed, they talked, they enjoyed their meal, their dessert, and one another's company. When the meal was over, they walked out back where there was a beautiful fountain with a light display and a jazz band. They slow danced and held one another. And when they were spent, they headed back to the estate. When the couple arrived back at Angela's house, Angela unlocked the door. Q walked her into the foyer, and he tried to give her a nice, demure kiss goodnight, but something took over him. Before either of them knew it, he had grabbed her around the waist, pulled her to him, started kissing her, picked her up off the floor, sat her on top of the console table, and tongued her down. Then he ran his fingers through her hair, down her back, and allowed his hands to roam over nearly every part of her. Angela could barely catch her breath. She took her nails and stroked down the back of his head and down his neck, and when he grunted, she groaned. When he stepped into her, she immediately felt his reaction, and when she started kissing him and biting his lower lip, he said, "Damn, love, I need you. He slowly slid his right hand up her exposed left thigh while pulling the spaghetti strap down off her shoulder with his left hand, while simultaneously kissing her lips down her neck to her collarbone and releasing her as his hand found her warm, wet center. His lips and tongue found her ipple. Angela moaned, and his member became even more pronounced in his pants. And just as he flicked her ipple with his tongue, his hand pulled her panties to the side, and as he slid his finger, they both heard Miss Brenda say, "You might want to step back, son." Angela buried her face in Q's chest and fixed the top of her dress, while Q attempted to adjust himself, but his tailored suit was giving him a little trouble. He tried to step back where Miss Brenda couldn't see him, but unfortunately, the tent in his pants made it very difficult to miss. Angela and Miss Brenda were both momentarily speechless. Then, in true Miss Brenda fashion, she said, "Son, I think you and that elephant trunk need to go on and head home." Angela covered her face in embarrassment, and Q hightailed it to the door. Then he looked over his shoulder and said, "I'll call you when I get home." Miss Brenda looked at Angela and said, "Y'all need a chaperone, and it looks like you might be in for a mighty fine treat."